let's go to the Packers, huh?
Yeah, let's talk about the Packers.
Oh man.
Clip that, chat.
Thanks, dude.
But yeah, let's talk about the Packers. Speaking of, we're talking a lot about quarterbacks. We're talking a lot about coaches, and I think it just, like I said, it just makes so much sense for this division. And let's talk about the Packers quarterback, Jordan Love,
Yes, sir.
year 3. Look, I think Jordan Love, his entire first 2 years as a starter has kind of been marked by how he's done in comparison to Aaron Rodgers, right? It's kind of it's the Packers cycle, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers, the beginning of Aaron Rodgers' career was marked by the end of the Brett Favre era, right? So now, though, it's year 3. I think Aaron Rodgers, he's already on his next team after his team after the Packers, right? He went to the Jets and then he went to the Steelers. So we're 2 teams away between Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And this is fully Jordan Love's team. So what do you need to see out of him for you to believe that the Packers are a continued playoff presence and a continued presence in this division?
I need him to add another layer to his game, right? Like there's 3 main areas where quarterbacks can thrive: is how they do against pressure, and that's in terms of adjusted accuracy and how they mitigate pressure and pressure to sack ratio, and how they do in the quote unquote intermediate to deep game, right? Because like any quarterback can, I know this is contrarian a little bit to what I said earlier, but any quarterback can throw in the short game if the offense is tailored to excelling in what they do well in the short game. Because some quarterbacks are better throwing outside the numbers in the short game, and some quarterbacks are better over the middle in the short game, i.e. Russell Wilson versus Jared Goff. Russell Wilson is much better hitting outside the numbers. Jared Goff is much better hitting in between the numbers, right? Jordan Love is good at mitigating pressure, but he is, in terms of avoiding pressure, but he struggles throwing against pressure after he escapes it, right? So if we look at his pressure to sack rate, he is at 8.9%, which is the 3rd lowest in the NFL. That's an elite rate in and of itself, right? And that was the 3rd lowest behind Josh Allen, and I want to say, I forget who the other quarterback was, but he was 3rd. I know that. So 3rd lowest pressure to sack rate, which is incredible. Josh Allen was historical in pressure avoidance rate, right? But Jordan Love was tied the 9th lowest in big time throw rate, which is when you're avoiding pressure and fitting a ball into a tight window or hitting a big play after pressure or just a big play in general. He had one of the lowest. And with that, he only had a 0.8% difference between his big time throw rate and turnover worthy play rate. And if you look at the big time quarterbacks like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes before 2023, these are guys with at least 3 percentage points differences between their big time throw rate and turnover worthy play rate. So he's not turning the ball over a lot or putting the ball in harm's way a lot, but he's not pushing the envelope either. And even though he's really elite at escaping pressure, he's not able to do much with it after that. So that right there shows weird quarterback. Like, we don't see that archetype often of being able to mitigate pressure but not being able to do anything with it. Kind of weird. He's middle of the pack in passer grade at 76.6%, which is a good passer grade. But in terms of the rest of the NFL and all how good quarterback play is now, kind of middle of the road. And here's a really weird one. He scrambled 12 times this past season. Aaron Rodgers scrambled more. Injured, coming off Achilles tear, Aaron Rodgers scrambled more than Jordan Love. And Aaron Rodgers had less attempts, or at least less dropbacks than Jordan Love. So that's, and granted, Aaron Rodgers savvy. He scrambled his entire career. He understands rushing lanes where Jordan Love might not. So a lot more veteran experience than Jordan Love, but still weird that a quarterback who has kind of been relegated to this pocket passer archetype is able to scramble more than Jordan Love, who's supposed to be a decent athlete, right? Then if we look at the intermediate and deep passing numbers, we'll start with deep first because deep passing is what a lot of people look at. He had the 5th most deep attempts at 69. He was 17th an adjusted completion rate on deep passes, which is 42%, which is good. But his big-time throw rate on deep passes, 19.2%, which is fourth lowest. So he does a good job mitigating the pocket and having deep attempts, but doing anything past that, he's been struggling with. And that's taking away drops, throwaways, being pressured, taking away all that. He wasn't good in terms of big-time throws. And then in the intermediate range, he had the same amount of 0 to 9 yard range passes as he did 10 to 19 yard at 69 total attempts in the intermediate range. So what that tells me is this is a quarterback who, if he's not dinking and dunking it, he's not putting it in that intermediate area where we see Jared Goff excel, Lamar Jackson excel, Joe Burrow excel. Like, he's not pushing the envelope that way. So if you have a quarterback who's either chucking it deep or dumping it off, defenses can be like, hey, we're just going to sit in cover 2 all day and say, hey, fuck it, try to beat us over the top. Or we might run cover 3 with hard flats, try to hit us over the middle and see what happens, right? Like, granted, that's not every defense, but he doesn't do anything to help himself outside of what the scheme offers him. And Matt LaFleur is awesome with the scheme that he designed. Like, he's a top 10 offensive line in the NFL. He's awesome at what he does, and that's why the Packers have been so good since he's taken over, even in the post-Aaron Rodgers era. But Jordan Love really holds his team back, at least as far as what we've seen the past 2 seasons. He needs to step up and say, look, I'm good at throwing the ball deep when I allow myself to throw the ball deep instead of just kind of crumbling, because I have some of the most deep attempts in the league, and I'm really good in the short game. If I can hit this intermediate area, his game's going to explode in terms of what this guy can do. But until he proves that, he's a middling average quarterback. And that's not what the Packers want after going from Brett Favre, who at the time was a top 10 quarterback, and moving on to Aaron Rodgers, who has now become a top 10 quarterback all time, arguably top 5. Like, very, very good quarterback, will be a first ballot Hall of Famer, despite what some people think. Like, this was a quarterback who was one of the most efficient quarterbacks of all time. Now you go to Jordan Love, who struggles in the areas where Aaron Rodgers is most efficient. Like, you got to pick it up at some point. Like, and I think Matt LaFleur can do a little bit more helping that. But at the same time, Matt LaFleur is doing all of this extravagant RPO and short game shit to supplement Jordan Love's shortcomings. So it's like, there has to be some pull from Jordan Love's side to say, hey, I'm going to pull this offense forward so you can really do what you want to do, Matt LaFleur, and really open up this offense. But we haven't seen it yet, except during Toyota-thon. That's a different story. He's a completely different quarterback during Toyota-thon.
Gonna get that low APR.
Yes, sir.
I mean, look, to hit on Aaron Rodgers' point that you made, I mean, I think a lot of people have kind of been down on Aaron Rodgers, especially in these past 2 seasons, and even going back to his last season in Green Bay. I mean, look, I have my issues with him because I'm a Jets fan, right? But 10 years ago, 11 years ago, the Aaron Rodgers over Tom Brady debate, I don't want to say it was serious, but it was popular.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people talked about it, and people felt there was a strong Aaron Rodgers contingency. I think over time that's obviously been proven wrong, but that doesn't really detract from the fact that what you said about Aaron Rodgers is true. Like, he is a top 10 quarterback all time, and he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, he is, one of the greats of our time, no matter what.
I just hate that we were robbed of a Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl in what was it, 2016?
Yeah, man.
Or whatever. Maybe it wasn't 2016. There was some year the Pats lost in the AFC Championship, and so did the Packers in the NFC Championship, and I was pissed. I was like, that would have been an all-time great Super Bowl. But it might have been 2014. But when the Pats beat the Seahawks, I think the Packers lost to the Seahawks that same year.
Yeah.
If I remember that correctly, because that was the Bostic muffed onside kick.
Yes.
That was that. But again,
I mean,
getting off tangent, continue your point.
Yeah. But one thing about Aaron Rodgers that, we kind of saw, especially towards the end of his career in Green Bay, that we are seeing now with Jordan Love that Green Bay has kind of pivoted on is they have finally drafted a wide receiver in the first round.
Thank God.
I wish I had some graphics, like with some confetti and some like a disco ball, maybe.
Congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out all the Evangelion fans out there. But they took Matthew Golden, 23rd overall pick from Texas. Great player from a great Texas team. What can he do to not only help the Packers get some wins, but also elevate Jordan Love's game?
Absolutely. And here's what I will say. Matthew Golden is going to be a very, very, very good wide receiver too, in terms of like Jordan Addison, T. Higgins level wide receiver too. Very, very high-end and good. So even though he was drafted in the first round, I don't believe he's a true X or wide receiver 1 like we've seen with some other receivers in the league. With that said, just being on the field day one, he's going to be Jordan Love's third or at best second favorite target, but behind someone which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Matthew Golden is super. He's kind of reminds me of Chris Godwin a little bit in terms of he's not the most athletic, he's not the strongest, and he's not the biggest, but he knows how to find open zone or open spots in zone coverage. He knows how to beat someone in man coverage. Like everyone looks at his 40 speed, they're like, oh wow, this guy's a barn burner. No, he's not. Like his game speed does not translate to the 40 speed, but that's okay. He still has good speed. He still is a good athlete. He understands pacing, which is a huge spot for wide receiver play. Like people look at Tatoria McMillan's film, which we'll talk about in a second, but because he was obviously in the same draft class, and people be like, well, he doesn't really separate well, or he doesn't really, he kind of relies on contested catches. He relies on contested catches because he forces himself into those situations because he's 6'5" and can go up and get it. Matt Golden is kind of the same in a different lens where he's like, well, I'm going to pace routes and then at the last second burst. And with that 4.2 speed and acceleration, I'm going to burst out of that break and maintain speed to give myself a yard of separation so I can catch a quick slant or a quick out or hit a comeback or a backside dig. Like he is so good at just understanding route tempo and when his route is supposed to get open. It totally merited a first round pick. I had a first round grade on him, not as high as some other receivers in this class, but I thought he was really good and would have been a first rounder even in last year's loaded receiving class. Like I would have had him above Ricky Pearsall, right? Like he is so good, like in terms of route running, how good his hands are, maintaining his speed out of breaks, which is like you could be an NFL receiver and round off your routes, but if you maintain your speed and rounding off, it doesn't matter if it's a crisp cut or a round off cut. Like as long as you maintain your speed, that's what matters in the NFL. And so like when people look at these 7-on-7 clips, like, oh, look at how much he stutters and how much he breaks, you don't know which way he's going to go. That doesn't matter if you can't maintain your speed. An NFL DB is going to keep up with that. That's going to allow them more time to accelerate.
Yep.
But if you keep your speed as good as Matt Golden does, who I think he was one of the best outside of Travis Hunter at maintaining speed out of cuts, like, man, he's going to be so damn good in this offense. Like, he'll get over 1,000 yards a couple of seasons. He'll be good. I don't think he'll ever be like leading the league in receiving yards, but he's going to be so good for so long that people are going to think that he's Hall of Fame caliber because of how consistent he is. Kind of like we've seen with Mike Evans with the Bucs, right? Like people are thinking he's Hall of Fame and he probably is Hall of Fame potential. He's just kind of been consistent and I don't want to say stagnant, but just kind of like level his entire career. I think Matt Golden's going to provide that same level of production and efficiency for the Packers that Mike Evans has done his entire career. And they're two completely different type of receivers.
Yeah. I got another target that I know you wanted to talk about, and that being the Packers dark horse in Tucker Kraft.
Yes, sir.
Talk about what this tight end's going to do to kind of help space out the offense a little bit.
Yeah, I had a choice last year between which tight end I thought was going to be better in terms of fantasy production in Tucker Kraft or Luke Musgrave. Musgrave showed more promise, but Tucker Kraft has shown he is the better long-term option at the tight end position in terms of blocking, receiving chops, just playing the tight end position overall. Like he is really good, and he's obviously my dark horse for the Packers. there were 31 tight ends and 115 total receivers with 50 targets, right? So out of all those guys, where did he rank amongst them? So he was second in tight ends and 24th in all receivers in yards per reception at 14.1. So out of tight ends, he was in the top 2-3%, and out of all wide receivers or just receivers in general, he was in the top 20% in terms of yards per reception. In terms of reception rate, he was tied 13th and tied 20th at 76.9. So top fifth we're looking at. In terms of yards per route run, which we talk about a lot, for tight ends, it's a little bit lower of a threshold than wide receivers. He was at 1.61, which was good for 10th in the NFL and 60th overall. So out of the tight ends, he's in the top third. Out of all receivers, kind of mid-range, right? But that's good for a tight end. That's what we want. Here's what gets me. He had the third lowest average depth of target amongst receivers and tight ends at 5 yards. The fact he was able to do that and was targeted at one of the shortest distances among all receivers in the NFL just shows me what he can do after the catch is devastating to defenses. With that, he was fourth amongst tight ends and sixth overall in passer rating when targeted at 134.6. That is gross. That's disgusting for any receiver to do, especially I don't think he was undrafted, but he was drafted pretty low. I think he was the 6th or 7th round pick, and he was dominant there. And then one of the most stickiest wide receiver stats we can look at is first downs per route run. He was 8th among all tight ends last year and 16th among all receivers at 0.112. So out of every 10 catches, he was getting a first down. That doesn't sound like a lot, but you think of receivers that got, 100, 120, 140 targets per year. He only got 60. He only got, I want to say 60 targets, maybe a little bit less, maybe 55. And he's doing that on every X amount of catches. Like, he could probably lead the Packers in targets this year. Like, he is a dog. Like, I'm going to be looking, and I hope no one in my fantasy league is listening to this. They're probably going to, but he's going as an 11th or 12th round value. I might reach in the 9th or 10th and be like, yeah, this is my guy, because he's going to be top 10 in fantasy tight ends this year, maybe even higher. And he is already, even outside of fantasy, in terms of actual football, he is a top 10 tight end in the NFL already. And he finally got his shot in one season. He is a great run blocker. He is a good receiver. He is awesome after the catch. Like, he is everything you want a modern NFL tight end to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with these new targets, with higher expectations on Jordan Love, I mean, they're always increasing, but this is probably the highest they've been. What can Green Bay do to kind of get in the mix with Minnesota and Detroit? I mean, look, let's talk about Minnesota. I talked about their schedule, right? I believe so. The second to last game for Minnesota and Detroit is each other, right? I think Minnesota might finish their regular season, hosting Green Bay. So
let me see.
Yeah, week 18 in Minnesota.
Yep.
Vikings, Packers, right? So Vikings play the Lions, and then they play the Packers. We talked about that Week 17 game being super important on Christmas, but then January 4th, I mean, what can the Packers do to kind of make a huge statement potentially going into the playoffs?
Well, here's what I will say. In the bulk of the Packers schedule, they start their season at home against the Lions. So at home in Lambeau, that obviously gives you an advantage, right? Yeah. For the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the next 10 weeks, they don't see another NFC North opponent. They play the Vikings twice, the Bears twice, and the Lions again in the last 7 weeks of their season, right? So that alone is going to allow them to build a lot of momentum against not bad teams, but against teams that are not in their division, which division games are always a toss-up. The Packers last year obviously went 1-5, even though they were better than the Bears. And arguably one of those games against the Vikings were better. They just made dumb turnovers at dumb moments, right? Like, they just couldn't hold down their end of the bargain, right? Like, you have so much more room to allow this offense to develop and grow and get Jordan Love in rhythm with Matt Golden and Tucker Kraft and allow Josh Jacobs to cook in the run game. At the same time, you allow this defense to be multiple, to expand, to let Lucas Van Ness develop as a defender. Maybe, I mean, Isaiah Simmons is kind of a bust at this point, but if he could somehow figure it out, he's probably going to figure it out in Green Bay as a dime backer or a nickel linebacker at best, right? If Isaiah Simmons can figure it out somehow, this defense is going to be better. I mean, who did they? Ja'Cory Bennett went to the Eagles, excuse me. But they still have some good corners on that team, even while losing Eric Stokes and Jair Alexander. They bring in Nate Hobbs. They bring in a couple of other guys. Like, this defense is going to figure it out in non-divisional opponents where when you hit this gauntlet where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divisional matchups in your last 7 games, I think this team's hitting the ground running at that point, and that gives them an advantage that they have only one divisional matchup, and it's week 1. And then after that, you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 week run or 9 game run where you're not playing a division opponent and you can try and just feel out how your offense and defense do. That's going to bode well for them more than any other team in the NFL, I think, just looking at their schedule, right? Like, that is what's going to help them get over the top. If Jordan Love can just try new things and try to be more aggressive and get comfortable with being aggressive, that's going to pay off in dividends again in these divisional matchups against 2 times against the Bears, 2 times against the Vikings, and one more time against the Lions.